5 books and counting. The Tales from the Omni Vault continues to expand as a universe. Go ahead and check the links down in the description to get your copies today. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni Viewer, and welcome to Genre Benders, Obscurities, and Flawed Gems, where we look at the best stuff you've never heard of, and have been for the last 10 years. Yeah, it's crazy to think, but as of December 2023, this channel has been going strong for a full decade. Way back then, I started this series by reviewing an obscure bit of kaiju animation entitled Negadon the Monster from Mars. I was still figuring things out at the time, so the quality of that video wasn't very good.
And you've only improved marginally since then. True, but even mediocrity needs to be acknowledged somehow. I figured that since I started this particular series by reviewing the short film Negadon the Monster from Mars, I'd commemorate the 10th anniversary by reviewing its semi-sequel Plan Zet. What do you think?
I can't think of a reason not to.
Then let us begin.
In the year 2047, as mankind was beginning to colonize Mars, the planetoid Februos materialized and settled in orbit around Earth, and its residents, the Foss, began their assault. Cut off from the Mars colonies, the remaining humans on Earth united to fight back, but the war quickly became one of attrition. By 2053, the only military force left on Earth is stationed in Japan and laughably understaffed. Taishi Akijima, or Akashima as he's called in English for some reason, is one of only 3 mech pilots who play an important role in Earth's final push to defeat the Foss. Will this plan work? And does it have anything to do with the superweapon rumored to be stored away somewhere beneath the Mount Fuji base?
As I'm sure you all remember, Negadon was designed to be a tribute to the Showa era of kaiju and tokusatsu films.
From the puppet-like movements of Negadon to the dark blue color of space, from the one-eyed protagonist who sacrifices himself to the giant drill on the Miroku 2, it was a great use of modern animation techniques to recreate a classic style.
You may have noticed from the earlier clips, but Plan Zet is slightly different, though it's not a complete departure.
The style here takes primary inspiration from mecha anime, especially Gundam and Macross. The majority of the action involves humanoid robots armed with big honking guns or super lasers being fired into space, and the action is designed to take full advantage of the fact that it's animated.
Does that mean there's nothing here for Toku fans?
Oh, I didn't say that. There is still an element of Toku homage to be found here. It's just assigned to the villains.
When I reviewed Battle in Outer Space, I mentioned that I found the movie's alien invaders, the Natal, far more interesting when we couldn't see them. For most of the movie's runtime, the Natal were known only through their ships and voices, which made them mysterious. This mystique, unfortunately, was shattered by the one scene where they do show up and turn out to be kind of wimpy in person.
In Plan Zet, a similar approach is taken to the Foss, only this time, we don't see them at all.
The only things we ever see are the planetoid and the flying saucers they fly around in.
No sign of the Foss is shown beyond their planet and their ships, assuming that is that they are separate entities.
The way in which they all behave and interact implies that Februos is no mere planetoid, but a living entity of sorts, and the saucers, which look vaguely technorganic in nature, might be extensions of its consciousness. We don't know for certain, but the clues might point in that direction.
That lack of solid answers is consistent with its predecessor.
After all, Negadon's origin and true nature were never fully explained either. We know he came from Mars, and that's about it. We don't know if Negadon is a natural creature or an ancient bioweapon. We just know that he's dangerous once he's on Earth. Similarly, we know only that the Foss are invaders, but we don't know what drives them or what they look like.
Clearly, these films present the universe as a very dangerous and mysterious place, where you're not quite sure what you're going to encounter, but you do know it'll be dangerous. It's not quite cosmic horror in the truest sense, but it's in the neighborhood. Now, this is an animated short film by Joe Nawazu. Specifically, it's a CGI 3D rendered film. And that's a style that Japanese animation doesn't always translate smoothly into.
Now, Negadon turned out well because it was trying to feel more like a live-action film, and the animation was mostly good. The biggest flaw is with the humans, whose level of detail depends on how much screen time they get. The lead, Dr. Narasaki, looks the best of the bunch, while the talking head news anchor literally is just a talking head. Meanwhile, the city, vehicles, Negadon, and Moroku 2 all look impressive.
Now in Plan Zet, the mecha and ship animation all still looks good.
As mentioned, it's more anime-inspired, so it's not as concerned with trying to look practical. While not photoreal, it all looks good enough. The mecha have sleek, angular designs that contrast well with the rounded shapes of the alien saucers, and Febros has an eerie look that I can only describe as a scarred eyeball. I really have no complaints with that side of things.
When it comes to the people, on the other hand, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I will say this in the positive, though. Visually speaking, they are consistent.
Unlike Negadon's descending levels of quality, Plan Zet makes sure all the human characters have the same level of detail. Nobody stands out as looking less rendered than the others.
That being said, though, this is still low-budget CGI circa 2010, so the human characters don't always look that good in motion.
Body movements are a bit stiff and mouth movements unnatural, which occasionally sends the characters straight into the uncanny valley.
There are also a few weird visual moments like the one I'm going to highlight right now.
Early in the film, our three mech pilots are startled. The female pilot, Kaori, strikes this pose and holds it for a surprisingly long time.
Not gonna lie, that looks awkward.
I'm getting mixed signals here, Omni, so be straight with me. Is the animation good or bad?
I said the animation was mixed earlier, Snazzy, and mixed is precisely the word. Ships and mecha look good, humans look less good, but I wouldn't call any of it outright bad.
Okay, so what about the writing?
Well, that's also mixed.
The plot isn't bad, not by a long shot. Despite the global stakes at play, the plot is grounded by a familial bond between brother and sister. The motivation behind every action Taishi takes is his younger sister, Koyomi. Despite initially being shown as a selfish slacker, Taishi had to assume a caretaker role for his sister after their actual father died in the initial Foss invasion. He does what he does to protect her and is even willing to send her to Mars so that, win or lose, she'll at least be safe.
Wait, people can still relocate to Mars if they want?
Apparently yes, though given the dystopic nature of the world, it's a privilege only a few people have access to.
But isn't there an energy shield around the Earth? And wouldn't the Foss just shoot down any ships that tried sneaking past them?
Look, Snazzy, I said the writing was a mixed bag and I meant it. Clearly some details got lost in the shuffle. The important detail here is that Koyomi can somehow get to Mars and be safe.
However, Koyomi is resistant to the idea. She was pretty young when their father died, so her perspective is different from her brother's. To Taishi, sending his sister away would ensure her safety. To Koyomi, splitting up the family is what leads to death, so she naturally wants to stay on Earth.
Plus, as Snazzy pointed out, getting to Mars isn't necessarily guaranteed.
Both perspectives are understandable. One is pragmatic, the other purely emotional, but they both stem from a place of mutual familial love.
So the story has heart, I'll give it that much. It's in the plotting that we find issues, and the primary reason for that comes down to pacing. The most straightforward way I can put it is like this. Plan Zet is trying to tell a 13-episode mecha anime storyline within the confines of a 51-minute short film. That means a lot of stuff has to get crammed into this single work. And apart from the emotional elements, not all of them get a chance to properly develop.
For example, the mech team's lone female pilot, Kaori, mentions that some people believe that humanity, not the Foss, are responsible for starting the war.
This is brought up completely at random and never elaborated on, despite feeling like it really should be.
We also get a speech from Commander Yura Yoshizawa that reveals a strong desire to prove herself to her superiors on Mars, and her failure to execute the plan has her ready to commit seppuku however she can, even if that means blowing up the whole base. Yet by the end, she's chosen to live and refuses to explain what changed her mind when asked. That's a lot for the character to go through in her limited screen time.
Now, rushed as these plot points may be, they still provide elements that help with characterization, which is why they were included at all.
Kaori brings up the rumor about who started the war because she's nervous, and it segues into her explaining that she only became a pilot for familial reasons. This shows that her resolve, though stemming from a similar place to Taishi's, is not on a stable foundation. For Yoshizawa, the point is not about the class disparity between Earth and Mars, it's that she specifically has everything riding on this, and failure is equal to death in her eyes. Character is at the heart of everything that happens in Plan Zet.
Could it have been done better? Absolutely. Like I said, Plan Zet is very rushed and condensed, and I don't doubt that better use of the runtime probably could have been achieved. Still, I recognize that effort was made to add substance to the cast, and that does still count for something. Now, some of you may be wondering why I keep referring to Plan Zet as a sequel to Negadon rather than just a follow-up or spiritual successor. Well, there is a reason, but elaborating on it would require getting into spoiler territory, and I don't want to ruin the big surprise if you haven't seen it yet. So, before I get into those details, allow me to summarize my final thoughts on the film here.
Plan Zet is an overall uneven film. The animation is occasionally wonky, but overall good. The characterization is mild, but not entirely flat, and the plot is rushed, but driven by good emotions. Negadon is ultimately a stronger film, but Plan Zet is still worth checking out at least once.
There you have it. Those are my final thoughts on Plan Zet. From here on out, I will be explaining what links this film to Negadon. So if you don't want to have that spoiled for you, you have to click away now. I'll even give you a few extra seconds. Well, you think they're gone?
If not, it's their fault.
That's an excellent point. Let's get to it.
Our first major clue that Plan Zet is a sequel comes when Yoshizawa refers to the short film's events in her big speech. She doesn't mention specific names, but those who have seen Negadon will know what she's referring to. You might also recognize her name, Yoshizawa, which she shares with Negadon's secondary protagonist. This is no coincidence, nor just a meta-reference, as she turns out to be his daughter, and he even shows up in hologram form towards the end.
But the biggest connection of all, both figuratively and literally, comes in the form of mankind's actual final hope.
Early on, we hear rumors of an ultimate weapon beneath the Fuji base called Kairos, something so powerful that it's said to be godlike.
When the initial plan to defeat the Foss fails, Kairos is activated with Taishi and Koyomi inside, and that turns out to be...
Is that a mecha Negadon?
It most certainly is, Snazzy.
In this film, Negadon is reborn as a mountain-sized machine. This winds up being an interesting way to make a heroic version of the monster that makes sense in context, and although its screen time is limited, the most is made with it.
Well, like I said, Plan Zet isn't perfect, but then again, neither am I or the content I put out. Still, you guys have stuck with me for the last 10 years despite it all, and for that, I am forever grateful. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. Okay, 10 years down. Here's looking forward to many more.
10-1 says it only gets worse from here, folks.
Thank you all for watching. Now be sure to head down to the description to check us out on other platforms, as well as find links to the 5 current books in the Tales from the Omni Vault universe. Again, thank you all, and we'll see you next time.